Hello, beautiful people. This is the Sports Ball Talk Show, back with Gian and Franklin, of course. We have a few things to talk about today. You can see the graphics. Deshaun Watson, Mr. Massage, we got to talk about him. He's coming back this week. This is going to be a longer thing because I feel like there's several things to talk about here. But first, I want to get you guys' opinions. Gian, I'll start with you. Is he innocent or is he not innocent? Should he have a job in the NFL or should he be in prison right now?
Um, I always believe in innocent till proven guilty. That doesn't mean he's not a schemy little guy or disgusting in any way, shape, or form. That's on him. As whether or not he should be allowed to play in the NFL, I mean, if he didn't break any laws or if they can't indict him on anything, then I guess he should be allowed. But I mean, there's a lot of schemy stuff around all that, especially involving the Texans. And with the non-disclosure agreements and all that kind of stuff. I try to stay away from that. I mean, Mr. Massage is a gross man. I'm just going to tell you right now. He is a filthy man.
Hey,
filthy.
be careful as well, Jan. I meant to tell you this beforehand, but we don't want to say anything that is not legally correct and then get slapped with a lawsuit. So just, you're fine, but just, you're starting to go that way towards negative things about Deshaun. So let's just keep it PG, in the realm of family friendly. But Frank, what about you? What do you think about this guy?
I got my Cleveland stuff on. I'm a big Cleveland fan, and I was not a fan of us signing him by any stretch of the imagination. I can't obviously legally say that he did it, but I mean, I think that if that many people come forward, then it's kind of not a question of that anymore. So I think besides just that and all the poor decisions he seems to have made, I just don't like all the drama that comes along with him. I don't like the fact that we gave up 4 first-round picks to get somebody who was out for the majority of the season.
And you're paying him a lot of money.
Yeah, we're paying him a ton of money. And, he brings... People were getting on the Browns for signing Odell when he was, here a couple years ago because he was dramatic. And, those same people are kind of quiet about the whole Deshaun Watson thing. And unless he delivers, and even if he does deliver, it's going to be, I think, one of the worst trades that we have really engaged in maybe ever, just based on all of the distraction that he's bringing to the team. Some of the accusers are going to be at the game.
Oh man,
yeah. Whether or
I
not,
saw there's 10 or 11 of them are going to be there at his first game. Ooh, man, I saw a thing and I was like, I mean, obviously, hey, go see a football game if you want to see a football game, but I don't understand why they would want to go. I mean, I understand if anything, you'd think that, hey, I don't want to be near that guy, and I understand you're not near him if you're in the stands, but from what it seemed like to me, based on what I was reading, which is just someone's interpretation of it, so this doesn't mean anything in terms of what these women are actually thinking. I don't want to say anything about them that would be negative or anything like that, but it seems like they're going to try and throw him off his game. From what I read, it's like they're trying to go to kind of, make him confront, I guess, his victims and, whatever you want to call it, and it's just supposed to distract and throw him off his game. I don't really think that that's going to work because the stadium is huge, and I mean, what's one or a few people out of the tens of thousands that are there? But going back to what you said, I forgot that you're a Cleveland fan, and I wanted to ask you because I've seen a lot of stuff. This is a multi-part question, and this is mostly towards you, Frank, as a Cleveland fan. I've seen a lot of stuff on both sides of the argument, from Cleveland fans, they're happy they brought him in because, hey, yeah, all that stuff happened, may have happened, may not have happened, there's all this drama, whatever, but he's a good quarterback. Whenever he was playing and was active for a full season, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He was on par with how Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are right now. I mean, he led the league in passing yards, and this is after D-Hop left. He's a very good mobile quarterback. Exclusively talking about his gameplay, besides the preseason games, which I guess were I mean, preseason's the preseason. I don't really count that for anything, really. But he was a great quarterback. And so I've seen a lot of people say, hey, it doesn't really matter if we go win a Super Bowl or go to the playoffs the next couple of years. Who cares? Like, this is something that's going to be in the past, something no one's ever going to talk about again, like, once this thing blows over. So is it one of those things that you think that fans of Cleveland or just NFL in general, I guess it's, people that don't like him and don't like the team will probably bring it up, but do you think this is something that the NFL fan base will move past, and maybe, like, let's say he brings you guys to a Super Bowl, do you guys forgive him? Because there's been a trend the last couple of years, and I like it. If I were a owner of a football team, I would be doing the same thing. But from a viewer's perspective, it's kind of meh. But it seems like the last couple of years, teams have been sacrificing their next decade to go win a ring right now. The Bucs did that and got a lot of people. Now they suck. The Rams did that, which the Rams are dealing with injuries. But even when they weren't, they still sucked. But they went and won a Super Bowl. So who really cares? What's the point of being like good or a first round playoff out, or even let's say you make the championship game every year because your team is good? Who cares if you don't go win a Super Bowl? I think most teams are like, I'd rather win a Super Bowl now, and then we can be a 3-win team the next 10 seasons, but we won a Super Bowl ring now. And I think that's because teams are just investing a lot more. Like, people are trading for first rounders like you guys did, like the Broncos did, which we're going to talk about the Broncos later, but that's funny. But like the Rams did whenever they won their Super Bowl. The Bucs signed Brady and got all these other pieces, got Antonio Brown for a little bit. So it seems like that's what teams are doing. So let's say that happens. Let's say maybe not this year because the season's already looking grim for the Browns. It's kind of getting late, but let's say next season, you guys get like 14 wins and go win a Super Bowl. Are you upset that you guys went and got Deshaun Watson, or is it like, okay, it sucks we give up our future, but we've never won a Super Bowl, so it's okay because we were gonna suck anyway. Why not give up our future that was already gonna be bad and go ahead and win a Super Bowl? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, personally, I think it's a little hard to disconnect the player from the things that he's accused of doing. So personally, I don't think so. I think a lot of the fans could and probably will. But at the same time, I'm not sure because, obviously there was Ben Roethlisberger, and he had, some accusations against him. And then, we had Kareem Hunt, who I actually went to school with, University of Toledo, who had that video that came out. And the Chiefs dropped him, and then I think Cleveland picked him up right then and there. We got Tyreek Hill over in Miami, who obviously has had some questionable things attributed to him as well. So I think it just depends on the level of play. If he goes to MVP level, Deshaun Watson, where people are looking at him like you were saying, they were looking at him a few years ago playing on the level of like Patrick Mahomes, leading in passing without D-Hop. And I think our receiving core is probably on par with what he had in Houston at that point. Obviously, Amari Cooper's not anywhere near as good as DeAndre Hopkins.
I mean, skill-wise, probably not, but in terms of production, I mean, he's been phenomenal. He's like, the 8th ranked wide receiver right now for this season, and just purely on stats.
Yeah.
And that's with Jacoby Brissett, which that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about. I hate to keep jumping around, but it was a very emotional game for Jacoby Brissett, this last one. Obviously, they won. That was big for him, but kind of going into this whole thing, he knew that he was going to lose the starting job whenever Deshaun Watson came back, I guess, unless he won every game. But he kind of knew what was coming, and people have been kind of like, oh, this man deserves a starting job. Jacoby's a great quarterback, etc. I like Jacoby Brissett. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think that he is a very good backup. I think he deserves a backup job on a team. I personally don't think he deserves a starting job. I mean, he's one of those guys that you love to love, like Geno Smith. Like, everyone loves Geno Smith because he's just got a good story. Jacoby Brissett has a good story, but the Browns are horrible this year in terms of their record. And they have a good team. They have a great defense, a great offensive line, good skills group. You get people like Myles Garrett on that defense. And Jacoby Brissett, not that he's played poorly this season, but they're not winning games enough to even be in the playoff conversation. And so that's what, I guess, me saying that, like, yeah, I don't think Jacoby should keep the starting job if your goal as an organization is to go out and win, which it seems like that's what the Browns are doing. Like you said, they signed Kareem Hunt, Odell Beckham. Even it's like they don't seem to care about the drama off the field issues as much as some other teams. So if that's their mindset, I don't understand why they would keep Jacoby Brissett in if they're trying to win games. And for that matter, any team. I mean, I think Jacoby Brissett's better than a few quarterbacks that are starting right now because I mean, let's say Russell Wilson, horrible quarterback right now, one of his worst seasons ever, probably the worst season ever. But compared to like Deshaun Watson and what he can be, his ceiling is enormous. So that's just my piece, I guess, to the people that are emotional about Jacoby Brissett leaving. I understand he was a good quarterback, very good guy, but you're not going to win any more games with Jacoby Brissett enough to get to the playoffs. But with Deshaun Watson, you might. And back to what you said about, like, you mentioned Big Ben, Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill. These are all players that had things happen off the field, but they don't really come up anymore. I mean, like, if you're making a joke about it or, like, there's, like, an NFL meme about it, sure. But, like, those last couple years of Ben Roethlisberger's career, you didn't hear about it. You don't hear about Tyreek Hill or Kareem Hunt's things. You just look at the fact that Tyreek is probably the first guy who's in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year right now. You look at Kareem Hunt as the best backup running back in the league who splits carries with Nick Chubb and has the best running back core there, maybe besides the Cowboys now because Pollard's gone off. But it seems like the NFL moves on from that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's different because Deshaun Watson's is, I guess, I don't want to say it's more serious because any level of accusation about that kind of thing is serious, but this one seems to be talked about more in the media than maybe some of the other ones. So I think that's one thing that's just going to be tough with this thing. I think it's possible for him to move on. Like I said, if he goes out and wins the Super Bowl, probably like Ravens, Steelers, and Bengals fans are never going to live it down because they don't want the Browns to be good, obviously. But like other, like if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you don't really care because that division and that team specifically has nothing that you hate other than just, I guess, they're the Super Bowl winners and not you. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be a huge issue. But the other thing I wanted to talk about with this whole Deshaun Watson thing is, what do you, and I'll go back to you, Gian, because I haven't talked to you in a minute, so I want to hear your voice. What do you think are the odds of the Browns making the playoffs at this point? And I will run you through some of the scenarios, like what it would take for that to happen. But like, what do you think because like, I remember going into the season whenever they signed Deshaun Watson, everyone's like, okay, they need to win probably 4, 5, 6 games with Jacoby Brissett, and then if Deshaun Watson could probably win these games, if he plays like he did, then they could probably make the playoffs. At this point in the Browns season, what do you think is the odds that Deshaun Watson brings them to a playoff game?
For Deshaun to really take off for the rest of the season, I mean, the Browns have to beat the Texans, which shouldn't be too much of an issue, which is kind of funny. Texans being the old team for Deshaun. But they also have a bunch of division matchups against the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens, and then a rather tough matchup with the Saints and the Commanders. They'd have to win, honestly, every single game remaining.
Well, here's the thing:
if they really want to make the playoffs, and that's what I think. And honestly, all those divisional matchups can be toss-ups. And at the end of the day, it all depends on Deshaun's chemistry with the receiving core and the team overall.
Yeah, like, I mean, best case scenario, obviously they win every game. But the thing is, like, this has a lot of moving pieces, obviously, because they need a few other teams to perform poorly the rest of the season. Right now, the wildcard spots for the AFC are Bills, Bengals, and Jets. Bengals and Jets sitting at 7-4. Either of those teams could lose a few games in the upcoming weeks and finish with, like, 9-10 wins because divisional games come up, end-of-season stuff happens. Either of those teams, I think, could fall out of that spot. And then you got the Patriots and Chargers that are one win behind them. So you need all those teams, obviously, to lose a few games. But if they win every game, then they are 10-7. And just running through their games, I don't think it's that unreasonable, honestly, because you got the Texans, who are the worst team in the NFL.
Yep.
You got the Bengals, which is a divisional game. Divisional games, I never really take for anything because those could always go either way, no matter what, unless your team is just that bad. You got a stretch of Bengals, Ravens. Both of those games, I think they probably lose because Deshaun Watson's fresh. We can't expect prime Deshaun Watson like he was a few years ago at this point. But assuming he is playing that way, I think that they can beat the Bengals and the Ravens. Then the Saints and Commanders. Saints suck. The Commanders have a better record than I think that they deserve. Heineke has a lot of turnover problems. Their defense is good, but I think that the Browns have enough of a skills group that they can get through that good D-line and just get some passes out. And then the Steelers in the last week 18, that's probably an easy game. I mean, it's once again Steelers. You can never bet against Mike Tomlin, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's that assuming Deshaun Watson plays well, it's not that unreasonable for them to get 10 wins at this point because he came on. Deshaun Watson's fresh. It's like he's basically coming off of a bye week. I mean, I guess it's a little bit different because he's been off for so long, and that could also hurt him because he hasn't played in a while. But he's been in practice for a while now. He's been in the facility for a while. Played during the preseason, so he's got some stuff there. But I think it's interesting to think about the fact that the Browns could potentially make the playoffs this year. I think that if Brissett had won one more game, I would feel relatively confidently, and like, yeah, they could probably go win enough games to get a wildcard spot. But they lost a few close games. I mean, they lost to the Falcons, which as much as I like the Falcons, they should have won that game. Probably they could have and should have.
The Ravens game.
The Ravens game, yeah, they lost. But I mean, like a lot of the games, like lost to the Falcons by 3, Chargers by 2, Ravens by 3. So it's a lot of these like coin flip games that they lost. And had they won, I think that'd be a pretty safe lock to say they're going to make the playoffs unless Deshaun Watson plays that bad. But I think it's possible. I probably wouldn't pencil it in because I think that Mike White, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is a stud and is going to bring the Jets to a playoff. I think the Bills, are going to fall in the pack a little bit because of injuries, but I think that they stay in the wildcard spot. And then the Bengals as well. I think the Bengals have figured it out. Jamar Chase is coming back now, so I think the Bengals make it. So it's kind of tough. I don't really see anyone taking a spot from those three, but you still got the Patriots who've played surprisingly well and the Chargers who deceptively bad this season, but they still win enough games to be in there, and they could win a few here at the end. So, I mean, this is just playoff stuff in general, but I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see the kind of impact that Deshaun Watson makes on this team because, like I said, a few years ago he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and then all this stuff happened, and he's going to a new stadium, new team, everything. But I don't know. This is going to be something that we're probably talking about every single week. We'll probably have a segment on Deshaun Watson because whether he wins or loses, it's going to be a huge deal. It's going to be a massive waste by the Browns for spending all that money in draft capital, or it's going to be another case of the Rams and the Bucs the past 2 years going all in for a good season. And I mean, the way I look at it is if he gets 9 wins this season, the Browns finish with 9 wins, I think Deshaun Watson's success in terms of teams winning because he came in so late in a bad situation, and I think next season, keep the same thing you're doing, but just give him a full season to play. They get 11 wins. Assuming, who knows what happens in the offseason with other teams in their team, but assuming that everything else is the same, I think they could do better. So that's the way I look at it. I don't know. I've kind of just been rambling about this, but if you guys have anything else before we move on to the GOAT of the week, you're welcome to throw in your comments.
Gian?
I mean, yeah, I feel like you pretty much covered everything, Ethan. I mean, all of it, like I said, all it comes down to is to see whether or not he can establish that chemistry with the team. Because I'm predicting these are all going to be very close matches. With the exception of Texans and maybe the Commanders, but the Commanders are kind of sneaky.
I hate to interrupt you, but that just reminded me of the other thing. I knew there was missing one thing I wanted to talk about with this whole Deshaun Watson thing. His first game back is against the Texans, and I think that the NFL did a massive disservice to everyone making his return week against the Texans because he originally had like a 4 or 5 game suspension, and then they raised it to like 11 weeks exactly, which is kind of a weird number because people are like, yeah, it's stupid that he only got that many games. I think that they should have picked any other number than 11 because it seems like it's just an NFL like storyline. Like, oh, Deshaun Watson's first game back is against his old team, the Texans, who he had all these non-disclosure agreements and didn't want to play and sat out for a season, and then all this stuff happened. It's like, dude, this is a accusation that's being leveled against Deshaun Watson that's very serious, whether it's true or not. You do not need to turn this into like, oh, well, we can turn this punishment into a good storyline for week 11 and make the Texans a relevant game. It's like, dude, just do either like 10 or 12 or any other number because them coming back and saying, yeah, your first game back is going to be against your old team who had a ton of issues and a ton of drama behind that whole thing legally and on the field and off the field and everything. Everything under the freaking roof was an issue with Deshaun Watson and the Texans. So giving his first game back, I feel like is just disrespectful to everyone who was involved in this whole thing. I feel like that's just the NFL's way of making money off this thing and trying to monetize a bad situation because that is just stupid. You picked 11 weeks out of any given number. You could have picked 2 seasons. You could have picked 1. You could have picked your original, which is like 5 games. Could have picked 10. Anything. But you pick 11. Very shady.
Yeah, I agree with that there. I think that, and this kind of goes along with one of the other things that I was going to say about being a Browns fan. They're unfortunately known for a lot of mishaps like this, and they live down in infamy. So whether it's like Ernest Biner and the fumble in the playoffs, or drafting someone like Johnny Manziel, or just any number of mistakes like that, I think that ultimately, unfortunately, this is probably going to be another one of those mistakes. Passing up on, the draft that we drafted Baker. And right, there were many other good quarterbacks that we could have taken, And I think this is just another way that the Browns screw things up, and the NFL finds a way to make money off of that, because why keep them around unless you can make money off of them.
Yeah, and I understand that the NFL is a business, and I'm a very business first kind of guy when it comes to business. I don't think that like you should be sacrificing all of your profits and revenue streams and all that stuff to make people happy. But this is a big deal, I feel like, compared to some other things. It's not like they just didn't hang up a certain flag on a certain month or like whatever it could be that people would get mildly angry about. It's a serious accusation of sexual assault, and that's something that you should, especially where your revenue stream is dependent on people buying in and like watching your product, that you need to be more mindful of. People aren't really talking about it that much. People talk about it a little bit, like at the beginning of the season, whenever we knew he was coming back at this point. But I don't know. I just feel like it needs to be mentioned again because the NFL, whatever. I've said my piece. Anyway, one question I wanted to ask you real quick: do you hate Baker Mayfield?
No, I don't. I don't hate Baker Mayfield. I mean, as
do
an Ohio
you
State
like
fan,
him?
Yes, I hate Baker Mayfield. I absolutely hate Baker Mayfield as an Ohio State fan. As a Cleveland fan, no, I don't. I think he came in, he gave it his all, and that's all that you can really ask of a quarterback. I think with the Panthers, you've seen why we got rid of him, just because he was not our quarterback of the future. He looked good for a few seasons when people were figuring him out, but I think just kind of like Russell Wilson, you cannot be a quarterback in the NFL unless you're Drew Brees, and be under 6'1" and be successful.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, I got a more specific question, and then I'm gonna get angry at you because I already know roughly what your answer is gonna be. Let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, 5 being you feel nothing towards him, anything below 5 meaning you don't like him, and then obviously closer to 0 is more hatred, and then anything above 5 is you like him, and 10 is obviously you freaking love him, favorite quarterback ever. 6 is like, yeah, he's cool. 7 is like, oh man, I really like that guy. As a Cleveland Browns fan, not Ohio State fan, what number?
6.
Okay, yeah, I won't get that angry at you, but here's the thing. You have a poverty franchise that you are a fan of. Baker Mayfield brought you to the playoffs and gave you wins. Baker Mayfield was a better quarterback than you guys have ever had, ever. The best team you guys ever had was with Baker Mayfield. All right, now you guys have better records than Blader in the playoffs in the past. But Baker Mayfield was a great quarterback to you guys. I understand he's no Patrick Mahomes, but he was great on your team. He dealt with injuries, and he averaged like 2 coaches per season, like 1.5 coaches per season. That man got done dirty. He brought you guys to a playoff. And honestly, listen, I'm a Chiefs fan, but the Browns should have beat the Chiefs in their playoff game 2 years ago because there was a horrible call at the end of the second half that allowed the Chiefs to get out by a touchdown. And if not only would the Chiefs not have gotten that touchdown, the Browns would have gotten one because it would have been on like the 10-yard line with a minute left. So Browns should have won that game, gone to the AFC Championship game, and then who knows what happens. But Baker Mayfield did that for you guys, so you need to love that man. You should be wearing a Baker Mayfield jersey right now and begging them to come back.
Jersey on. I got to rep all Ohio.
I got my jersey on too. I got my Naruto jersey. I don't really have I don't have a sports jersey on right now. Sorry, but anyway, we'll move on because that's enough negativity about Deshaun Watson. But there was a lot to talk about right there, and I needed to get answers, especially from you as a Browns fan. But